It was just past 2 in the morning when I woke up. The stillness of the night felt unsettling, and as I reached out beside me, the cold sheets were a clear indication that he wasn't in bed. I lay there for a few moments, trying to process the quiet, my mind racing. He'd always been a deep sleeper, but I had gotten used to the warmth of his presence next to me, the rhythmic sound of his breathing as we slept. But tonight, something was off. I lay there in the silence, debating whether to go back to sleep or get up and look for him. It wasn't like him to just disappear in the middle of the night. He didn't even leave a note or send a message, and I knew he was home because his truck was parked in the driveway. Still, something about it felt wrong. My gut told me to get up and find him, but I wasn't sure what I would do once I did. I slowly got out of bed and padded down the hallway, careful not to wake the house. As I passed by the living room, I saw his truck parked out front and another vehicle next to it. The second car didn't belong to anyone I knew. My heart began to race, and a cold sweat formed on my forehead. I walked through the house, calling out softly, hoping he'd respond, but there was only silence. I made my way upstairs to the guest bedroom, and to my surprise, the door was locked. This wasn't usual. We never locked doors in the house unless there was a reason to. I stood in front of the door for a moment, feeling an increasing sense of dread. My stomach churned. I didn't know why, but everything inside me screamed that something wasn't right. Without thinking, I pushed against the door with all my strength, and when it finally gave way, I saw him. There, in my childhood bed, lay my fiancé with another woman. I froze, heart hammering in my chest, as the reality of what I was seeing hit me like a ton of bricks. There they were, tangled in sheets, his body pressed up against hers in a way that I had once known intimately. But it wasn't me. It wasn't me lying there, in the bed I had spent countless nights in as a child, a place that had always been a sanctuary for me. And now it was a place where my world was shattering. Before I could fully process what was happening, he jumped out of the bed, panic in his eyes. But it wasn't a panic of guilt, no. It was a panic because I had caught him. He grabbed me by the neck, my throat constricting under his hand, and pushed me out of the room. I was gasping for breath, trying to break free from his grip, but he was stronger than I was. The force with which he shoved me was so violent that it felt like the world was spinning around me. He slammed the door shut behind him, leaving me standing there, breathless, in the hallway. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to understand what had just happened. I wanted to scream, to break down in that moment, but I couldn't. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, or where to go. Everything I thought I knew was now a lie, and I didn't know how to fix it. The reality of what I had just witnessed settled in like an anchor in my chest. My body felt frozen, unable to move, as my mind raced through 1,000 conflicting thoughts. How could he do this to me? How could I have been so blind? I had trusted him, given him everything I had, and in return, I found him in the one place that had always felt like home, my childhood bed, with another woman. I wanted to scream, to break something, to demand answers right then and there, but I knew that wasn't going to give me the closure I needed. As the shock started to wear off, the anger began to set in. I was furious. Furious at him for betraying me, furious at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I couldn't even process the absurdity of this situation. How could he think it was okay to do this in my house, in my space? That was the bed where I had spent my childhood nights, safe and sound, dreaming of the future. And now, it was tainted forever. I wanted to rip it apart, burn it, tear the entire house down. But I couldn't stay there, not with him and not in that place. I knew I had to leave. I knew there was no coming back from this, no salvaging what we had. I turned away from the door, my breath shallow and fast, and stumbled down the stairs. I had to get out. I had to make sure I wasn't trapped in this nightmare any longer. As I grabbed my phone to call his parents, I was shaking. I didn't know what I expected from them, but I didn't know where else to turn. His father had always been a steady presence in my life, someone I could talk to when things got difficult. But now, I wasn't sure what his reaction would be. What would he say when he found out his son, the man I had trusted and loved, had done this to me? I wasn't sure if I could handle his anger, but I had no choice. I dialed the number, my hands trembling. When his father answered, I barely knew what to say. I was a mess of emotions: anger, fear, betrayal. I told him what had happened, what I had seen, what I had found in my own home. He was shocked, but I could hear the anger building in his voice as I spoke. I could tell he wasn't ready to face this, but he knew something had to be done. He said he was coming over right away. When his father arrived, everything felt like it went into slow motion. How would you feel if your partner hid their affair for months or even years? Write in the comments. The tension was thick, suffocating. His father was furious, yelling at his son, demanding an explanation. But I couldn't stay to hear it. The scene had already broken me, and I knew I couldn't handle any more confrontation. It was like I was watching someone else's life unfold before me, and I was just a bystander, unable to change anything. It was like a car crash, horrible and inevitable. As I watched them argue, I felt the weight of the situation crushing me. I was drowning in my own emotions. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. I grabbed a bag and started packing my things. There was no other choice. I couldn't stay in that house, not with him, not with the lies that had been exposed. Every corner of that house felt like a betrayal. The love we once shared, the plans we had made, were now shattered. And I had to leave. There was no point in trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. I didn't even wait for dawn. I left that night, barely looking back as I drove away. His parents took me in for the night, giving me a place to stay, but even there, I felt like an intruder. Their kindness didn't fix what had just happened. I stayed with them until morning, but I couldn't sleep. I couldn't escape the images of what I had seen. My mind kept replaying that moment over and over, him in bed with her, in the place that had once been sacred to me. I couldn't escape it. That weekend, I moved out of the house for good. I didn't even try to salvage anything. I left it all behind: our life, our plans, the house that had once felt like the future. I didn't care about the house anymore. I didn't care about the things we had built together. All I cared about was getting away from him, getting away from the lies, and from the overwhelming sense of betrayal that clung to everything. I let the house foreclose. I couldn't bring myself to care about the bills or the legal implications. In that moment, none of it mattered. I had given up everything for a relationship that wasn't real, for someone who had never been honest with me. And all that was left was the weight of his betrayal, the crushing reality of what had happened. I had trusted him, and he had taken everything from me without a second thought. But even after everything, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to move on. I had to rebuild my life. So I did. Slowly, painfully, I started over. It wasn't easy, but with time, I found the strength to let go of the past. It wasn't long before I met someone new, someone who saw me for who I was, someone who respected me, who treated me the way I deserved to be treated. Together, we built a new life, a new home, one that was full of love, trust, and respect. 9 years passed, and eventually, that house, that life, and the hurt it caused faded into the background. It was finally off my credit report, the damage had healed, and I was finally happy again. I had built a new life, a life that was no longer tethered to the past. And for the first time in years, I could breathe again.